Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meany here with you. If you're following along on the YouTube page, that being the FTN YouTube page, smash the like button. You have any questions, hang out with us here during the show. We can address them throughout the show. You have any starter sit questions for this evening? We're going to talk about props. Our guy Tino Rodriguez is going to join us in a little bit. Of course, you are well aware of Tino. He joins us here and there, but his Giants are playing tonight. A little Monday Night Football action. The Bucks 11-point favorites here tonight. The total at 50. We're going to talk about that game in a little bit. We have some props. We can call some touchdowns. Maybe get crazy with a same game parlay. There's a few games on the ice here tonight. So we got some NHL picks. We got some props, as well as maybe to hit the waiver wire in the NHL. It's week 7 of the fantasy hockey season already. Man, time absolutely flying by. This show will only come at you 3 times a week, 3 times this week. We won't be around on Wednesday, and we won't be around on Thursday for American Thanksgiving, but we will have a betting show on Thursday over at FTN that you can watch for free. Myself, Jill Gallant, an all-Canadian broadcast coming at you with the 3 Thanksgiving games. So we really will dive into that slate tomorrow, and because there's going to be no show on Wednesday and Thursday, we will dive into some NHL picks, just kind of look ahead at the week and get you set up. We will be back on Friday. We'll give some picks, some DFS plays, some props, and all that good stuff to help you get set up for week 12 of the NFL season. But 3 games on Thursday, so we'll get you set up for those 3 games tomorrow. We'll talk waiver wires a little bit throughout this show. There's really not a whole lot to talk about when it comes to waiver wires. It's really just kind of getting yourself set up for a playoff run. I think most leagues, most standard leagues, trading is done. Maybe after this week is pretty much the last week. I know a lot of my leagues this past weekend was the last time to make some trades, but if you can still make some trades, by all means, we will talk some buy lows and some sell highs tomorrow. So we won't talk about the roster trends like we do every single Wednesday on this show, but again, for the most part, really, a lot of these guys that could help you out are owned. I do have 10 wide receivers that I gave my guy George to make a graphic for us. We'll do that in a little bit. Just 10 wideouts that are owned in fewer than 60% of leagues that could help you out moving forward. And again, it's these guys I think are mostly owned, but the ownership says that they are available in some leagues, maybe deeper formats. These guys are picked up, but potentially 8-team, 10-team leagues. People play 8-team, 10-team leagues. Heck, I wish I played in an 8-team league because I ain't going to make one of my leagues 14. No chance. Going up against Taylor and Eckler. I have Taylor in 3 leagues. I ain't even going to win those weeks. I am going up against Eckler and Taylor in 1 league and absolutely getting demolished. I was looking across my leagues just to see how many people had Taylor and Eckler. I counted 3 times. And 1 team won't even win with Taylor and Eckler. Imagine that. There is some big fantasy performances from week 11 of the NFL season. I'm going to touch on that in a little bit, like we usually do on Mondays, take a look at the top performers at each position. I also want to just take a look at the playoff pitchers as well, because there was still a couple crazy performances from yesterday. The Bills losing to the Colts. We had the Colts on the show to cover, but I didn't think that it would be a blowout. I still personally thought the Bills are going to win in my own pool. Pick them with your own spread. You don't want to overshoot. You won't get any points. I only picked them to win by 3. I thought it would be a tight game, but it wasn't tight at all. And what I said last week applies this week even more, that the Bills have some major issues. You can't be that one-dimensional. You can't run 8 plays. It's 8 running plays. It's it. You have to have some sort of balanced attack. You have to have it. And I'm looking ahead at this Bills schedule, and they're up against some tough run defenses. And all of a sudden, this seems like the Pats' division to lose. We've been talking up the Pats a lot here on this show. I know Jake Seeley on All in Football, which you can catch on Game Plus Network this evening, I think 8 Eastern. He's on there 3 times a week. He'll be on tomorrow. And I don't believe he'll have a show on Wednesday, but he's on there 3 times a week for the most part. And he wasn't really giving the Pats all that credit. Now, I'm not here to crap all over Jake Seeley. He knows what he's talking about, but they have taken advantage of some soft teams. The true test will come. So I'm going to go through a lot of the playoff teams, their schedule, and just kind of see where we're at here as we head into week 12. But that was a big shocking game, I suppose. The Bills losing on home field to the Colts, but you remember last year's playoff game where the Colts almost put up 500 yards of offense led by Phillip Rivers, and I thought they should have won that wild card game. So this is a Colts team that's starting to trend up here a little bit. Green Bay and Minnesota was fun, entertaining. Of course, it came down to the final few moments. Like all Vikings games, I think 7 straight games have been decided by 7 points or fewer, basically a touchdown. And they've been on the wrong side of a lot of their games. They're on the right side of it last night. Tennessee, right, losing to Houston. They've beaten so many good teams this season, but yet they've lost to the Texans and they've lost to the Jets. And then Seattle at home. I know Tino was on this. We were talking before we got on. He was on Arizona. Credit to the Cardinals getting it done here without Kyler, 2-1 without Kyler and Hopkins over the last 3 weeks. But no real excuse for Seattle to lose that game on home field, right? They're completely out of it now, and I wonder if this is just it for Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. I think it will be. I think this is going to be the last season for Russ in Seattle. Maybe they make the coaching change. Maybe they decide to go with Russ and get away from Pete Carroll. New offensive coordinator in town. Things have just been much the same. I know we can probably give him a bit of a pass with the finger. Clearly, he doesn't look himself. He broke his finger on his passing, on his throwing hand. So clearly, there's an issue there. But it's been 2 straight games where this Seattle team has looked pretty brutal on offense. They were shut out against the Packers a couple weeks ago, and then Russ and company couldn't really do anything. There was one big play to Tyler Lockett towards the end of the game, but nothing was really happening in that game. And then last night was phenomenal. Pittsburgh and Los Angeles. I was playing hockey last night, and I was watching the game. I probably shouldn't say that. I was driving, and I was listening to the game. The phone was on. I was listening to the game. I was watching the roads. What a wild game last night. I got back and they were up 2 scores. It was late, jumped in the shower, came out of the shower, and then it was a tie game, and then there was the Chargers going for it on their own 34 and not getting it. I still am not in the man, Staley's got some stones for some of the play calling that he has, and I know analytics, like, you have a better chance of getting that and winning the game than punting it away, or I suppose at that moment they were really just going for it or punting it. It was one of the 2 options. Now, they didn't get it, but you just set up Pittsburgh with you're already in field goal range, right? It's just it's such a risky play, but they've been on the right side of it more so than the wrong side of it. But the Chargers, I thought, got pretty lucky to win that game last night. I say that, but like, Pittsburgh had scored like 30 some odd points in the fourth quarter. They were in control until a couple, a tip pass, and all of a sudden Pittsburgh is right there tying the game. But we'll go over all these games. But the 2 biggest performers from yesterday had to have been Jonathan Taylor and Austin Eckler, combining for 9 touchdowns. Taylor had 5 and Eckler had 4. There weren't a lot of injuries really from yesterday. A.J. Brown, just reading this morning that it sounds like he avoided a serious injury, a chest injury. CeeDee Lamb is dealing with a concussion, and all signs point to him not playing this week. Of course, the Cowboys are playing on Turkey Day, and they're going to be without Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. So that's tough news. And, Dallas hung around in that game against the Chiefs. I thought the Chiefs still looked a little mediocre on offense. Dallas created some turnovers, but, credit to Kansas City for the win. Would it be different if they had CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper? Potentially. It could have been, but a short turnaround for Dallas and going to be without their 2 top wideouts, most likely. Justin Fields looked like he avoided broken ribs, but when Andy Dalton came in there, 2 plays, and all of a sudden they scored points. Right? It was a quick little pass, I think, to Jimmy Graham, and then all of a sudden the big one to Darnell Mooney, who had a massive day, number 1 wideout from yesterday in fantasy. And then Gronk is optimistic to play. And then before we came on here, I saw Cortland Sutton signed an extension, a 4-year extension, 60.8. So that's over the past week and a half or so. They've locked up 2 of their wideouts, 2 of their 3, and Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton. Before we get into the picks, something I always do off the top of the show here. This code may not last forever. Want to give it to you guys if you're just new to betting and you want to get into some betting, and maybe your season-long leagues are dead. You want to come over and maybe sprinkle a little cash on some props. We have a lot of sharp minds over at FTN, and we will talk bankroll management with you guys, betting strategy. We have the premium Discord chat, which is available in the betting package. You got some tools, some projections, analysis, of course, picks, everything across every sport. Great for hockey because we're killing it in the NHL. Guys are killing it in the NBA, and we have all the picks. PGA, I think our guy Matt Jones just had a PGA outright win yesterday, so credit to him. And again, everything all available for you over at ftnbets.com/pricing. Use that promo code FTNTV for 15% off. And you don't have to sign up for the whole year if that's a lot, right? It's a lot to commit. Maybe you just want to hang out for the month. You sign up here today. You got a month to hang out. Hopefully, we can provide some winners and pay for a subscription for you for next month, and then away you go. All right, we'll take a quick break. I wanted to roll through some of the top performers and then just take a look at the overall playoff picture as well. And then Tino is hanging by. We're going to break down tonight's football game, some props and some picks, and then some NHL props and some picks, as well as fantasy hockey waiver wire. So a lot to get to on this show. Hang by. We'll be back soon. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. All right, before we bring up the waiver wire board, I got the 10 wide receivers who could potentially be available in your leagues. Let's just take a look at yesterday from a fantasy standpoint. I always like to look at touches and target leaders. So I'll roll through just a running back position here and some of the opportunity leaders. We'll start with Jonathan Taylor. So he had 32 carries yesterday. I was wondering why he was still in the game towards the later part of that game. They were up 3 scores and Taylor just kept getting the ball. I know he already had 4 or 5 touchdowns at that point, but man, a massive day for him. 32 carries, led everybody across the board, and then he had 35 opportunities. That's carries plus targets, so that led the way as well. Joe Mixon with 30 carries, Myles Gaskin with 23, so a big drop-off after Taylor and Mixon in there inside the top 2 with 30-plus carries. Mixon had a really strong day. It looked like he wasn't going to. He found the end zone twice, but he was getting stuffed behind the line of scrimmage quite a bit against the Raiders, but he had a big second half. Myles Gaskin took advantage of the Jets, 23 carries. And then your usual suspects, right? Your Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, who's been averaging 18.8 carries over his last 6 games. He got back there, had another game with over 100 yards. Just really strong. It's the only positive really to talk about with this Cleveland Browns team, despite them winning that game yesterday against Detroit. But am I supposed to be impressed on home field that they won against the Lions with 3 points? Not really. James Conner, 21 carries. Antonio Gibson, 2 strong games with him again. He didn't have any targets out of the backfield, but he had 19 carries. He was efficient. He looked good. The schedule is pretty strong. So if you've stuck it and you've hung around with Antonio Gibson, that's great news for you, because we've talked a lot about him on this show as a sell high candidate, as a buy low candidate, as someone maybe to get off your roster, but he looks healthy and he's getting a lot of carries, and a nice win for Washington yesterday against Carolina. Jeff Wilson wasn't super efficient, but he did have 19 carries. I think, the Elijah Mitchell, when he gets back under center, would be good news for him to, get back to getting 19, 20 plus opportunities out of that backfield. And San Fran looks good. They're healthy right now. They're playing good offense. The defense looks good as well, and they're in the hunt to make the playoffs. Rex Burkhead didn't do a whole lot, but he had 18 carries, led the way for Houston. Mark Ingram, 16 carries, Devonta Freeman, and Miles Sanders. It was Freeman's backfield. Latavius was sprinkled in a little bit, but I do believe it would be Devonta Freeman moving forward. Miles Sanders, a great game from him. He had 90-plus yards, the most yards for a running back against the Saints this season. And then last year, same sort of deal, right? They had gone, I think, 44 or 46 straight games without allowing a 100-yard rusher when they played the Eagles last season. It was Jalen Hurts' first start, and both of those guys had 100 yards against them, and Hurts looked good yesterday again. I've been pretty impressed with Jalen Hurts. So those are the carry leaders. For the opportunity leaders, it was Taylor at 35, Mixon at 30, Gaskin at 27, and just, again, the same sort of deal with Cook, Chubb, Ingram, Freeman, Jeff Wilson, Antonio Gibson, Burkhead, DeAndre Swift. So Swift has had a couple decent games in a row carrying the ball, but not so much receiving the ball, right? It's been weird. He's not getting a lot of work through the passing game, but he has been certainly doing a whole lot on the ground game. Your fantasy point leaders for running backs: Jonathan Taylor, this is a half-point setting, 51.9 51.9. Man, it's got to be just... Again, I have this guy in 3 leagues and I'm going to lose. What does that say about my squad? And also, when we get to wide receivers, there's some big performances from some wideouts. Eckler, number 2 at 38.5. Joe Mixon, 24.3. If you got Mixon, man, I like what... this is kind of a tough schedule, but he just gets all the work, and it's just so nice to have a running back that just gets all the opportunity. DeAndre Swift, 22.1. CMC, 21.4. Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook, James Conner finds the end zone again. Myles Gaskin, Devontae Freeman, CEH got a big bulk of the work. For the most part, Darrell Williams didn't really do a whole lot. He found the end zone, CEH, and then Najee Harris there. For your wide receivers, your target leader is Darnell Mooney with 16 targets. He only reeled in 5 of those 16 targets. He had a big play. It was Andy Dalton's second pass of the game, which really got the Bears going on offense. That's got to be a disappointing loss for Chicago as well, right? You're going up against a Baltimore team without Lamar Jackson. You're at home field here. And then you find a way to lose that game at the end with Huntley. You know, he made a couple nice throws and then you lose that game. It's got to be so frustrating to be a Bears fan. Keenan Allen, 13 targets. We had Keenan and Deontay Johnson, who also had 13 targets, plus money to have 7 grabs. We hit that last night. Other than that, it was just an okay day from a prop standpoint. Didn't get a couple that I mentioned on this show, like Hunter Renfrow. Didn't get Brennan Cooks. I have no problem going back to Hunter Renfrow moving forward, but maybe Cooks has to be off my radar. But Darnell Mooney, number 1, 16 targets. He had Allen and Johnson, 13 each. Elijah Moore is going to be on the... We could just bring it up now if you want, Tino, some of these wide receivers as we're talking about it right now, if you want to bring up the wide receiver board. So you see some of these guys that we're really going to talk about here. These guys are owned in fewer than 60% of Yahoo and ESPN leagues. So Mooney's up at the top of that board. Elijah Moore ran a route on 81% of Joe Flacco's dropbacks. And this was the big, you look at the box score and it's like, oh, wow, he finally had a good game. It's been 3 decent games in a row now for Elijah Moore. But the biggest takeaway for me from yesterday with Elijah Moore compared to the weeks before, he was playing behind guys like Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder, and when Davis was out, it was Denzel Mims. He was playing behind these guys. When he was getting on the field, much like Rondell Moore, who had a big game yesterday in Arizona on a bye week. I don't have him here because I expect Hopkins to come back next week, and then Moore will be behind all these other guys. But Elijah Moore now, for the most part, yesterday rather, he just played a lot of snaps. He ran a lot of routes. In the weeks previous, when he was on the field, they were finding a way to get him the ball. And it was like, okay, whether it's an end around, a slant, a bubble, we're going to find a way to get the ball in your hands. Now it's like, all right, we've used him in a sparing role over the weeks before, and now I think he's going to be a part of this offense moving forward, so he could certainly help you out. I think Joe Flacco's decent for this offense moving forward. I really do. I mean, obviously, Elijah Moore benefited. Jamison Crowder, his catch prop was plus money. I know it's been hit or miss so far. He's dealt with a lot of quarterbacks and some injuries, but he was a big player in the passing game for Joe Flacco as well. So this list, Tony going tonight, Traquan Smith, I think he's the Saints guy to own inside that offense. I don't know who the heck the quarterback is going to be moving forward if they make that switch with Taysom Hill. Van Jefferson is still a guy that I believe in as maybe the number 3 for the Rams. AJ Green, right? You got the bye week this week with Arizona, so he's probably going to be dropped. Maybe you can pick him up. He could help you out in a deeper league, maybe come playoff time. The schedule is really nice for Arizona in the playoffs. And they got Robbie Anderson, who showed up again yesterday. Crowder's on that list. Russell Gage, I'm not super excited about, but teams are really focusing in on Kyle Pitts. They're doubling him, and Russell Gage and this Atlanta offense is absolutely atrocious. But if you're in a deep league in a full point setting, he could maybe help you out in a pinch as a flex guy. And then Cedric Wilson, if you really are in a pinch and none of these guys are available, like that's the guy. I mean, we could even put him ahead of, say, AJ Green or Jamison Crowder, Russell Gage, certainly, maybe Van Jefferson. If you need somebody to start this week on the short week, this is a guy who could rack up 7 to 10 targets with no CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper in this week. So just going to continue to roll through some other dudes here in terms of targets. So Rondell Moore had 11. It was the Moore guys, right? The rookies, 11 for Elijah, 11 for Rondell. Rondell caught 11, all 11, but he only had 51 yards. Elijah had 141 yards and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill, always going to be among the leaders, 11 targets, 9 grabs, 77 yards. MVS had the big play at the end where it looked like the Packers are going to win the game. And then Minnesota came back the other way. 10 targets, 4 grabs, 123 yards, and 1 touchdown. He's always that big boomer bust guy. He's never a guy that I feel comfortable rolling out in season-long leagues, but in DFS, like, he's always among the leaders in ADOT. You can check out those free tools over at ftnfantasy.com, looking at air yards, looking at target share, looking at ADOT, things like that. Super beneficial, I think, definitely in the DFS land, and also in the season-long, too. You can get a lot out of it. I just like to look at the week leaders, and our stats will be updated, I believe, late Tuesday, early Wednesday, and something I always like to look at, just the air yard leaders and target leaders for that week, and then overall. Thielen and Jefferson both had 10 targets each. It was Jefferson who had the monster day, 2 touchdowns, 169 yards. Thielen had a TD and 82 yards. Gallup's in here for 10 targets. He's another guy, obviously, that will benefit without the 2 studs in Dallas this week. Jalen Waddle continues to get a lot of targets with Tua Tagovailoa. Not doing a whole lot with those targets, 65 yards. He did catch 9, all 9 of them. He's great in a PPR setting. But this is just a guy who just, it seems to be every week, like 7 to 9 catches for 40 to 65 yards. It's okay. It's great. This is not a high ceiling there with him. Tyler Boyd had the big game. Other guys here that we could maybe talk about if A.J. Brown misses a lot of time. Potentially Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, 8 targets, 7 grabs, 107 yards. We know that Julio Jones is sidelined here on IR. And then who's the big pickup? It was Marcus Johnson. I mean, he left with a hamstring injury. And then they cut Des Westbrook. They cut him. He was like their 4th round wide receiver. They cut him and they brought him back, and he scored a touchdown yesterday as well. Adams is on this list, and we'll go to the wide receivers, the most fantasy points here. Justin Jefferson takes the cake, 33.2. I thought it was actually Mooney who was your number 1 wide receiver. It was Jefferson 1, Adams 2, Elijah Moore 3, and then Darnell Mooney 21.6. He had 80% of the targets yesterday. Keep in mind, no Allen Robinson. There was really nothing there from the tight end position. Cole Kmet had a stinker. I was in on him to have a decent game. Now, it's a short week for Chicago. Does Andy Dalton start? You know what? Justin Fields is really starting to trend up in this offense, but Andy Dalton may be better. He may be better suited right now for this offense against the Lions. I think Darnell Mooney is a must-add if he's hanging around the waiver wire. I think he's a must-play as well. MVS, wide receiver 5. Deontay Johnson, 19 points, wide receiver 6. Marquise Goodwin had the big play at the end of the game. That was crazy. That's where I thought the Bears were going to win. It was like 4th and 11 or something like that, and he just threw it up, and Mooney finds the end zone, but you're not really starting him from a weekly standpoint. Mike Williams had a touchdown late. You never know what you're going to get with Mike Williams, but his ceiling is so high that you have to start him. Terry McLaurin, Adam Thielen, Brendan Ayuk had a really strong game. I like the direction that these Niners are going right now. I've been hard on them so far this year, but they're healthy and they're playing really good football right now. And then Jalen Waddle's in there. For tight ends, Travis Kelce is number 2. Your number 1 tight end was Zach Ertz, 2 touchdowns. He had a massive day, 24.8 fantasy points. Trotman against the Eagles. I don't know if that's just against the Eagles. He has trended up over the past couple weeks, but there is something to note with the Eagles. 9 touchdowns to tight end so far this season. Number 1, they've allowed the most catches, and they've allowed the most receiving yards to tight ends so far this season as well. So somebody maybe to pick up and roll with, but maybe that's just all about Philadelphia. And the Eagles have the Giants next, and I kind of like Evan Ingram to score a touchdown this week, and I'm certainly going to like him next week to score a touchdown. All right, we'll take a quick break, and I want to talk playoffs. Maybe we'll do this with Tino. We'll bring in Tino next. We'll talk Giants, and I want to get his thoughts on just the overall playoff picture as well. Mean Streets will continue here on Game Plus Network. Keep her locked. Welcome back, everybody. Mean Streets continuing here on a Game Plus Network, hanging out live. Don't be afraid to leave a question. What do you need? Did you get burned by Jonathan Taylor? What do you need tonight? Do you need Ryan Suckup points? This guy, I need Ryan Suckup points. I want to ban kickers across the board because they just burn me all the time. I'm going to be so frustrated if Suckup doesn't get me 8 points here tonight. Tino, what's going on, man? Your Giants are in action here today. You're rocking the gear. You're ready to rock. You had a nice little meme there. Giants plus 11. The catch.
Yeah. So I did some math, like I told you before I came on here, literally seconds before, and yeah, we feel great about Giants plus 11 coming off the bye. We've played the Bucs close the last 2 times we played them, but the Bucs this year are undefeated at home and have won by an average of 22 points, which is not encouraging. Didn't need to know that, but you got to cover all the tracks here. The closest game was against the Cowboys on opening night. But yeah, they've been taking care of business at home, coming off the loss, obviously. Thanks for having me on to talk about the Giants, by the way. You know, you never cease to do this. You always ask me kind of knowing I'm going to, of course, say yes, but deep down, a part of me, it hurts. It hurts every time. It hurts every time.
Yeah, well, you know this team so well. It's not to bring you on and crap all over them. It has nothing to do with that. You know this team pretty well, and we usually break down Monday Night Football games anyways. So let's do that. We can maybe talk some playoff picture stuff in the next segment or something like that. Let's just talk Giants and Bucs here. So we have 11 points. Here we go. Tampa favored by 11. The over/under is at 50. I mean, we could share the props here now. We can talk through them if you want. Yeah. This is kind of what I'm thinking here tonight with some of these props and give the reasoning behind it. I am on the Giants plus 11. I gave this pick as well on Friday. We did okay with the covers and the totals, the straight up picks. I was on Dallas. Now I kind of off Dallas a little bit when I noticed the Amari Cooper thing, but personally still thought that this team that they could have won. And then on the Packers, but we did have San Fran to cover. And we had the Colts. I'm sticking here with the Giants plus 11, and I think I gave plus 10 on Friday. So this line has moved a little bit. Chris Godwin over 6.5 catches, over 70.5 receiving yards. Leonard Fournette over 62.5 rushing yards. Kadarius Toney, assuming no Sterling Shepard here. I know the last time we saw the Giants, Tino, we talked about this. It was really just throwing the football to the running backs and then to the tight ends. But I think Daniel Jones is going to have to drop back here a little bit more and throw the football. So Toney over 4.5 grabs and over 41.5 receiving yards. And if I'm calling a touchdown for some decent money, I do think Godwin finds the end zone here today. But for Evan Ingram, I think you can get that at plus 295 over at FanDuel. What do you think about those props? Clearly, you're in on the Giants. I mean, the bye week, but also this Bucs team, man, they've kind of stuttered on offense and defense over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, and the Giants are getting all their weapons back, right? So you got to feel pretty good about that. We didn't get to talk about it too much in detail last week, but I told you I felt good about Saquon coming into Monday night. He was still questionable, and then it was all signs were pointing to he was going to play. That's why they didn't play him the week before. In terms of those props, I think actually the interesting one for me, and I selfishly need Chris Godwin to go off and cover those things because I need him to score like 20 points for a Monday miracle for me. But I actually love Mike Evans. Mike Evans in the last 2 games against the Giants, each of the last 2 years has 4 touchdowns against the Giants, including 2 years ago. He scored 3 touchdowns in Daniel Jones' debut. Now, he's one of the top 2 players with odds in terms of on DraftKings here at like minus 115. I'll double check it right now. Minus 110 to score at any point in time. Godwin's behind him at plus 110. Point being, you can't really get great odds in terms of any time scorer, but maybe take him first scorer at plus 650 and just kind of get out in front of it. Again, we are on Giants plus 11. There's multitudes of ways the Giants could play this game. Last time they played the Bucs, they were up 14-3 at half, and then they blew the game. The last time they came back down 18 at half in Tampa Bay. So this could kind of go either way, right? So the cover can get there, and the Bucs could still do good. So at least to start. So I don't mind Mike Evans' first touchdown score at plus 650 here.
So I was worried about, the first touchdown score. I get that. I was just worried like Bradbury. I was just a little worried about him. And I figured like those two would be, he would be on Evans. I think Evans is capable of beating any top corner. And I thought maybe in the middle of the field would be wide open for Godwin. I just want to think of for Godwin for a catch prop. I just taking a look at his last 3 games, like 11 targets, 8 grabs, 111 yards. 12 targets, 8 grabs, 140 yards. And then his last game, 8 targets, 7 grabs, 57 yards. Those 3 games just happen to be without Antonio Brown. So with no Brown again this week, I think he's going to be the big part of the offense. What do you think about Saquon? Like Saquon, all signs point to him coming back. I'm looking in our prop shop just for something on Saquon. There's not a whole lot. His rushing yard prop at FanDuel is 42.5. It was 38.5 a couple hours ago. Is that just a stay away? Would you consider plus 185 for a touchdown here today? Like, what would you need to do to get involved? Like say his catch prop was at 3.5 or 4.5. Would you take that?
No, to be honest, I would stay away from Saquon props because I think
Altogether?
I think it's mispriced. Think about it. Like every other weapon I'm looking at right here, other than Saquon, is plus 225 or higher. So like I just like and Saquon for all you can say about him, we've seen when he comes back from injury. I'm not saying he should have restrictions today, but they tend to be tentative with him. So at plus 125, I want to feel a little more confident about it. When you have Golly coming back from injury at plus 225, Ingram, like you said, at 3-1, then you got Kadarius Toney on DraftKings at plus 350. I'd even take Daniel Jones rushing at plus 330. Like I would take any of those for a surplus of reasons over Saquon at plus 125 right now, just because the Giants, they don't always handle him correctly. Most of the time they don't handle him correctly. So in terms of the offense and even how they handle his injury. So I don't know how they're going to handle him. And at plus 125, I just don't think it's juicy enough for me to really want to, dip my toe in the water.
I agree. I'm not in on it as well. I'm not in on it either. I mean, I would have given on the board. Ingram is the guy that you've been hard on, but you've also at the same time, you've been in on him as well, haven't you? Like for getting touchdowns back-to-back weeks now, he's got a touchdown. I know like 3 for 15 and 3 for 38. Those are his last 2 games. Not spectacular, but I mean, Jones looks his way in the red zone, man.
Well, and then so with the weapons back, I mean, people now respect Toney. So when they're doing a lot of pre-snap motion with him, they're doing like orbit motions. He's going in the backfield. He could catch a screen, could be throwing a pass. Team's got to respect that. Golly's going to be back. He's going to draw a lot of attention. So what the Giants did the last 2 games, especially in Kansas City and against Oakland, is using those guys as decoys. I mean, you saw it. They beat Las Vegas. Sorry, I said it twice. Las Vegas. And Toney, as we mentioned on this show, really wasn't involved. But they used him in 3 different facets: in a run, in an attempted pass, and in a reception. So Ingram is going to feast off that with all the eyes not being all on him. Last year, he had all the pressure on him. Now, I am hard on him because I still don't think, we'll ever see the ceiling that everyone thinks we'll get out of him. And it's tough love. It's tough love. He's a first-round pick. I want him to be better. But at the same time, yeah, I think he's in a great spot at 3-1 again here against a Bucs pass D that just isn't very good. And that's where I think, and I told you, the prop we haven't touched on yet, both quarterbacks, Brady's up at 2.5 passing touchdowns. Daniel Jones is at 1.5, which it normally is, but both in positive odds. I think this game features more passing touchdowns than rushing touchdowns. Last year, they held Fournette in check pretty well, 15 carries for like 50 yards. I think both teams are going to throw the ball. I think Brady needs a bounce-back game after last week. I expect him to air it out. Now, 2.5's high, which is why I'd kind of rather, again, Daniel Jones getting 2 touchdown passes. Only it's happened twice this year, right? So I get that coming in. That's why it's priced the way it is. But like I said, with Saquon, how they're going to use it, just think it makes more sense that if you're going to map out a game script here or kind of see how things play out, it's either Daniel Jones is going to do it with his legs, hence that over 20 rushing yards that we always love, or he's got to throw the ball. So, I don't see Saquon being the biggest factor. And if I'm wrong, God, I would love it. I don't mind if Saquon is the X factor in this game. Trust me. I don't know. It's hard for me to trust it.
You said over 1.5 touchdowns is plus money for DJ, for Jones?
Yeah, I'll tell you right now. So over at DraftKings,
that's pretty good. That's
plus
pretty good.
135 for over a touchdown and a half. And then Brady's over 2.5 at plus 110. So
yeah, because he will have to drop back a little bit. Man, it's got to be frustrating again. I'm not trying to crap on you and the Giants, but it's got to be frustrating because we haven't seen this team fully healthy yet. Have we seen it once? And it was that game in New Orleans against the Saints where they just looked so complete all over the place, right? You were getting things from the wide receivers. Jones played great. Saquon was awesome in that game. I'm looking at the game log here, and I kind of see like it would maybe be the same thing where he drops back and he throws the ball like 40 times in this game because how much success are they going to have against the Bucs? The Bucs are throwing the ball more than anybody, up-tempo, high pace. Brady, as you mentioned, throwing the football. If he puts up 3 touchdowns here today, that's going to have to, Jones is going to have to push the pace a little bit too. You could sweat it out. Maybe you get that second touchdown a little late. I like that one as well. I mean, plus money is pretty strong for that one. Do you like the Toney one at 4.5 grabs. And what did I have? Over 42 yards. Do you like
Yeah,
that one?
so I love it because Shep is out, right? I think that's
Yeah,
the
I
hard
think he
thing.
catches like 7 balls in this game.
The last game we got burned with him, and I believe it was Monday night against Kansas City, he fell a half short, right? I think we
He
got
left for
beat.
a bit though, too, right?
Yeah, we got beat on the hook, but Shep was involved there, and they were both kind of in no man's land because they do similar things and they're going to eat at each other's receptions. I think with no Shep, look, Kenny Golladay still hasn't been figured out with the Giants yet. They don't really know how to use him, and he'll be involved. And you see it if you follow that Saints game script. He was involved, but really late in that game. And even when he did get involved, he didn't necessarily take over the game, right? So I just think Tony will be front row and center in this offense. And I think if there's one thing, as much as you rip the Giants offense, is that they have been putting an emphasis on getting him the ball and letting him be that spark plug for this offense that desperately needs it. And if that's the case, the only thing you worry about with those receptions is if he's attempting passes and he's getting rushes, right? I think his touches will be there. We just need to make sure that they're receptions and not, reverses, jet sweeps, and, orbit passes, which is probably
Orbit passes
as well.
Here's what I will say. Here's what I say before we wrap up here with Kadarius Toney. So again, I love this wide receiver cornerback matchup tool. I absolutely love it. If you're season long, if you're going for a push here, you can sign up, get the FTN fantasy season long package. I think it's $19.99. You can use the promo code Mean Streets. Heck, you can type NHL in there. I know that's still 20% off. FTN TV, save yourself a bit of a discount as well. Just looking at this wide receiver cornerback matchup tool. So you got Kenny Golladay, who has a bit of a tough matchup here against D. Delaney, and then Darius Slayton against Jamel Dean. It's a really tough one. Kadarius Toney has the third best matchup according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool. In the slot, he's going to be up against Mike Edwards, who has an 87% catch rate allowed so far this season. That is the third highest mark in all of football. I'm looking at the corners that give up the most catches in terms of catch rate. It's Richie Grant at 90%. And then it's PJ Williams for the Saints at 86%, and then Mike Edwards at 85%. So this is a plus matchup for Kadarius Toney. I think you got to like that. And then the one guy that I didn't really get into, we got to get out of here, break quickly, is Leonard Fournette. I really didn't get an opportunity to talk about him, but he hadn't covered this number in his last 2 games. But those games got out of hand. The one against Washington, surprisingly, got out of hand, and then a tough spot against the Saints. 67 rushing yards, in 4 straight games, and some big games too, 81, 81, 67, 92. I also kind of like his 90-plus total yards receiving and rushing because he has 3 grabs in each of his last eight of his last 9 games had at least 3 grabs and 40-plus receiving yards in 4 of his past 6. But I do think there's a couple ways to kind of paint this game script here tonight, Tino. We both like the cover. It could happen at the end. But if the Bucs get up and score some points, it is going to be Lenny running that football. Rush DVOA defense, the Giants, 30th according to Football Outsiders, 8th most yards per rushing attempt, and the 7th most fantasy points. And we have seen Lenny really have control of this backfield. So the rushing prop is what I like for him to go over 62.5. But myself personally, I think he could get to the 90 total as well if the Giants are able to match. And then one thing we got to tell people is that if you're playing in Yahoo leagues, go pick up Ronald Jones tonight, right? Just in case. I know it's worked for you. It's worked for us. It's worked for multiple people. You don't know if Fournette suffers an injury. It could be Ronald Jones. Even though he hasn't been great, he could be all of a sudden an RB2 for you. It would be a nice prize. You don't have to beat everybody on the waiver wire. Any final words about this game?
Yeah, monitor the Rob Gronkowski injury. So I got the sleeper notification a little while ago. It said, barring any setbacks during pregame warmups, he will play, which is kind of what we joked about because we're both going against him in some down-to-the-wire fantasy matchups. But realistically, I think if he plays, if you look at his odds, the way it's priced at plus 140, he scored a touchdown in the last matchup. Giants can't guard tight ends. I think it makes a lot of sense that he'll get involved and potentially score in at least a very minimal role in the red zone against this Giants team. But at the same time, if he doesn't play, that's when I really like Mike Evans. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here, because without him and no AB, that's why Godwin's going to eat in the middle, but there is no red zone guy then, right? AB was a touchdown scorer as well.
Good call.
Godwin, for as good as he is, he does a lot of the heavy lifting, and Mike Evans tends to be that touchdown guy. So that's just kind of where my head was at on that as well.
No, it's a good call. Yeah, you bring up a great point there. All right, Godwin over 6.5, over 70.5, Fournette over 62, rushing yards. Tony over 4.5 grabs and 41.5 receiving yards. You can actually get Tony at 3.5, but I like the 4.5. And then Ingram, a TD, plus 290. But Evans is a great call for a first touchdown as well. Dude, good luck to the Giants. I mean, I'd like to see them win. I don't care. I know it's NFC East, but whatever, man. Like Bucks.
Let's stir the pot.
Let's have all these top teams. Let's stir it up. Yeah, let's stir it up. All right, 3 more segments to get to. I'm going to talk some playoff pitchers, NFL playoff pitchers, and I got some hockey stuff to wrap up the show as well. Keep her locked. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. All right, welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I can never get that right. Eventually, we're going to get it right here on this show. Okay, so I wanted to go through just the playoff picture here. We can dive into this a little bit more tomorrow as well, but I just, it's kind of fresh here in our minds, and I have some notes here written down on some of these teams. So AFC, you got Tennessee, who's 8-3. They've won 7 of their first 9 games, and then they got through what was a difficult part of their schedule, wins against the Bills, against the Chiefs, Baltimore, and then losses to the Jets, and then Houston. They have New England this week, which will be a tough matchup for them, but they still hold down the number 1 seed in the AFC at 8-3. But do we really believe in Tennessee? Like, would you honestly take the Titans in the playoffs against the Chiefs? Would you take them against the Bills? I don't know if I'm totally there. They certainly need Derrick Henry at full health. And there was reports last week that he could potentially be there, early January for a playoff game. But he probably won't be 100%. But they would need Derrick Henry for me to take them really serious. Baltimore is the number 2 seed in the AFC at 7-3. Again, Tyler Huntley, man, he showed up towards the end of that game. They do have losses to Cincy and Miami, so I'm not completely sold on them. How about the Pats? How about the Pats as the 3rd seed here at 7-4, started 1-3. Now they're atop the AFC East with 5 straight wins. Their schedule, it turns a little bit tougher. Tennessee, Baltimore, Tennessee, Buffalo, Indy, Buffalo, then 2 layups at the end, Jacksonville and Miami. But now that division goes through them. They're playing terrific defense. I think they're playing the best defense in the NFL. If I had to pick the best defense, honestly, in the NFL right now, it probably would be New England. I got to give them a lot of credit. I know they're beating up on some mediocre teams, but they're still playing really good football. The defense looks great. Matthew Judon looks like is an absolute he is. He's a baller. He's like 10.5 sacks. But the signing has been terrific for him. Overall, I think he's been fantastic. And the defense, like I said, it's playing really good. So, but we'll see. We'll see what they do against these next 4 opponents. It will be really tough for them moving forward. Got KC. They've won 4 straight. They look pretty good overall. Defensively, this is a team that has really just turned the corner. Over their first 7 games, they're 3-4. They allowed 29 points per game, 404 yards per game, and they only had 7 takeaways. But over their last 4 games, they're 4-0. They've only allowed 11.8 points per game, 294 yards per game, and they have 8 takeaways. So they're playing pretty good football right now. And they do seem like they are back, right? After they went through some moments, they do seem like they're back. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is that they are playing really good defense. Wildcard teams, Cincy 6-4, the Chargers 6-4, Buffalo 6-4, right? In the hunt, you got Pittsburgh 5-4-1, Indy 6-5, Cleveland 6-5, who I do believe the Browns are done. Las Vegas seems broken at 5-5, and the Broncos at 5-5. They can't get it done. Over in the NFC, Arizona, number 1 seed, 9-2, 2-1 over the last 3 weeks without Kyler and Hopkins. They got some they beat some tough teams in there in San Fran and Seattle. I think you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. And with Green Bay losing and falling to 8-3, Arizona gets that number 1 seed back. And the Packers 2.5 game lead on Minnesota. They do have the Vikings week 17, but a matchup against the Rams could be tough. Dallas 7-3. They've lost 2 of their past 3 games, but they have lost to some good teams this season, KC and Tampa. I think that division is theirs. The Bucs a 2-game losing skid. If they win today against the Giants, they will move ahead of Dallas for that 3 seed. The Rams a 2-game losing streak. Stafford 4 interceptions over the last couple games. What's this Rams team look like now moving forward? Really tough schedule. Green Bay, Arizona, Minnesota, Baltimore, and San Fran. Minnesota 5-5, the 6th seed, 4-2 in the NFC. That's why they're ahead of New Orleans and San Fran. 7 games in a row decided by a touchdown or less. San Fran, Detroit, Pitt, Chicago, the Rams, Green Bay, Chicago on the schedule. Not easy for them, but I do think that they'll be a playoff team. This is where we're I think, kind of the Saints in a playoff spot. I don't like it. They're not making the playoffs. 3 straight losses after losing Jameis. Buffalo, Dallas, the Jets, Tampa, Miami, Carolina, Atlanta. Some okay games in there, but they just got smoked against the Eagles. In the hunt, San Fran, Philly, Carolina. San Fran's the team. If you can find some futures on them to make the playoffs, they're not going to win the division, but I think they could make some noise. I've kind of turned the corner on them anyways. 5-5, mini this week, which is tough, but Seattle, Cincy, Atlanta, Tennessee, Houston, and LA to wrap it up at the end of the year, and they just beat the Rams. I know the Eagles have a very soft schedule, but I think San Fran is that team that gets in. I'd love to hear your thoughts on a team that you think that could get into the playoffs, or your Super Bowl favorite as well as we head into Week 12. Another break. We're going to turn the corner and talk some hockey. Don't go anywhere. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I have left myself enough time here to go through the hockey, but we'll rapid fire through some of this and we'll figure out more balance in our lives moving forward. I just had to talk some NFL props and also just that schedule. I really wanted to talk about the playoff picture a little bit with you guys. We'll dive into that a little bit more. See you tomorrow. We see the shot props here. We got Zach Werenski, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Vladimir Tarasenko, Matt Duchene, and Nazem Kadri here for your shot props this evening. Let's start with Zach Werenski. I have no problem with Boone Jenner. He had 7 straight before the last game where I said if he had 3 shots, it would give somebody $100 for retweeting my tweet. And of course, it didn't work out. I want to give money away. We'll try it again this week. Follow FTN Bets and follow at Chris Meany. You have a chance to win $100. But for Zach Werenski, 3+ shots in 9 straight games. He's averaging 4.4 shots per game over that span. He had 6 in his last game. He had one game with 10 shots last week. So I'm taking the over on him. But Boone Jenner is certainly in play as well. For Pierre-Luc Dubois, he's cleared 2.5 and 7 in his past 9 games. I've talked enough about this guy over the past 2 weeks. He's been awesome so far for the Jets. Vladimir Tarasenko has been great so far this season as well. 7 goals, 7 assists. He looks healthy. That shoulder looks great, and that's a huge sign why he's putting pucks on net. He has 24 shots on goal in his last 4 games. He has 3+ shots in 6 straight games, playing on a line with Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. These 3 look phenomenal. Think about them tonight in DFS. Matt Duchene has cleared 2.5 and 6 of his past 9, having a great season as well. And that's bounce back campaign for Matt Duchene. 12 goals and 7 assists. He had a hat trick in the last game. We were all over that over at ftndaily.com. 14 points in his last 9 games, and 10 of those 14 points are goals. Him and Mikael Granlund have looked phenomenal so far this season. On the other side of that game, Troy Terry's been plus money for 2.5 shots. Those north of the border, Bet365. You can get that at plus 140, 2.5 shots. And then Nazem Kadri, 3+ shots in 4 of his past 5 games. Red hot as well. 4 goals and 15 points over a current 8-game point streak. 7 points over that span have come come on the power play. So those are the shot props that I like. We got Cambo, we got Dustin. You guys have hung out this whole time. We're going to talk some more hockey in the final segment. Don't go anywhere. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. All right, well, welcome back here one final time. That is welcome back one final time. We got Dustin and Cambo hanging out with us. Tino, if you want to put up the board here for tonight's picks, we can walk through this together here. Cambo asks a question here. Thoughts on 1.5 shots at -1.8 versus plus money at 2.5? I'm fine with the 1.5 if you include it in a parlay, but if you're playing these as singles, and I play a lot of these shot props too as singles, you know, it's really not worth it at -180. If you want to include some of these guys, you see Buchnevich, Dubois, Makar, Terry at 1.5 at cool bet for those north of the border. I'm cool with those guys putting them in a parlay. I have no problem with that, but for singles, I'm not totally in on it. For tonight's games, Carolina, they've just been so good for all season long. They've been phenomenal. We got Winnipeg, Colorado win by 2 against the Sens, and then the under in Anaheim, Nashville, and Columbus. I think with Carolina, I go -146 yesterday. It's now -160, but it's 14-2 on the season. They lead the league with 14 regulation wins. They're second in goals per game. I really like this Jet squad. 1.66 goals against per 60. It's the second best mark in the NHL. The Sens haven't played in over a week, and Colorado has 24 goals in their last 4 games. That's why I'm taking them on the puck line at -135. Anaheim and Nashville under 5.5. The Preds top 10 in goals against, and then the second fewest goals for. So this is a team that really struggles on offense, but they keep the puck out of their net. Anaheim, same sort of deal. And then the under between the Blue Jackets and the Sabres. The Sabres have scored 3 or fewer goals in 8 of their past 10 games. Guys, Dustin, Cambo, thanks for taking the time to hang out here and just getting a little hockey towards the end. If you have any questions, more questions, leave them there in the YouTube section. I'll circle back and address those ones as well. Good luck on the ice. Enjoy the football game. Check out that Manning cast. Pick up Ronald Jones as well. We'll be back tomorrow. Cheers.